Good afternoon, Bagalu, and all the viewers who might watch this video. Today I want to discuss this topic about the Asian financial crisis. The Asian financial crisis, also called the Asian contagion, was a sequence of currency devaluations and other events that began in the summer of 1997 and spread through many Asian markets. The currency markets first fell in Thailand as the result of government's decision to no longer peg the local currency to the US dollar. Currency declines spread rapidly throughout East Asia, in turn causing stock markets declines, reduced import revenues, and government upheaval. The cause of this crisis was rooted in several threats of industrial, financial, and monetary phenomena. In general, many of these relate to the economic strategy export-led growth and had been adopted across developing East Asian economies in the years leading up to the crisis. This strategy involves close government cooperation with manufacturers of export products, including subsidies, favorable financial deals, and a currency peg to the US dollar, to ensure an exchange rate favorable to exporters. While this benefited the growing industries of East Asia, it also involved some risk. Explicit and implicit government guarantees to bail out domestic industries and banks, cozy relationships between East Asian conglomerates, financial institutions, and regulators, and a wash of foreign financial inflows with little attention to potential risk all contributed to a massive moral hazard in East Asian economies, encouraging major investment in marginal and potentially unsound projects. With the reversal of Plaza Accord in 1995, the government of the US, Germany, and Japan agreed to coordinate to let the US dollar appreciate relative to the yen and Deutschmark. This also meant the appreciation of East Asian currencies that were pegged to the US dollar, which led to major financial pressures accumulating in these economies as Japanese and German exports became more and more competitive with other Asian exports. Exports slumped and corporate profits declined. East Asian governments and connected financial institutions found it increasingly difficult to borrow in US dollars to subsidize their domestic industries and also maintain their currency pegs. These pressures came to head in 1997 as one after another they abandoned their pegs and devalued their currencies. The effects of this Asian financial crisis, the countries that were most severely affected by the Asian financial crisis included Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, South Korea, and the Philippines. They saw their currency exchange rates, stock markets, and prices of their assets all plunge. The GDPs of the affected countries even fell by double digits. From 1996 to 1997, with the nominal GDP per capita dropping the most were Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, South Korea, and Philippines. Hong Kong, mainland China, Singapore, and Japan were also affected, but less significantly. Besides its economic impact, the Asian financial crisis also resulted in a political repercussions. The Prime Minister General of Thailand, Yong Chayut, and the President of Indonesia, Suharto, resigned. An anti-Western sentiment was triggered, especially against George Soros, who was blamed for triggering the crisis with large amounts of currency speculation by some individuals. The impact of the Asian financial crisis was not limited to Asia. International investors became less willing to invest in and lend to developing countries, not only in Asia, in other areas of the world. Oil prices also fell due to the crisis. As a result, some major mergers and acquisitions in the oil industry took place to achieve economies of scale. As mentioned above, the IMF intervened, providing loans to stabilize the Asian economies, also known as tiger economies, that were affected. Roughly $110 billion in short-term loans were advanced to Thailand, Indonesia, and South Korea to help them stabilize their economies. In turn, they had to follow strict conditions, including higher taxes and interest rates, and a drop in public spending. Many of the countries affected were beginning to show signs of recovery in 1999. Lesson learned from the Asian financial crisis. Many of the lessons learned from the Asian financial crisis can still be applied to situations happening today and can also be used to help alleviate problems in the future. First, investors should beware of assets bubbles. Some of them may end up bursting, leaving investors in the lurch once they do. Another possible lesson is for governments to keep an eye on spending. Any infrastructure in spending dictated by the government could have contributed to the asset bubbles that caused the crisis, and the same can also be true of any future events. Some of the effects of the Asian economic crisis seem to strengthen the realist position. First, the crisis has exposed the dependence of regional states on the great powers for economic prosperity and security, while at the same time promoting the continuity of political balance of power in the region. Second, the crisis supports realist claims about the conflict-prone nature of economic interdependence. Third, the weak response and the divisive intramural politics within Asia-Pacific regional institutions during the crisis provided further ammunition to realist claims of their limited contribution to the regional order. That's it from me. Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone.